I went to start my car today and the battery was dead, which was strange because I just had it out for a nice drive less than a week ago. So I hooked up the jumper cables to it, and when I connected the final connection, the negative connection on this car, the horn was beeping as loud as it possibly could, just a steady blare. So I had to disconnect it, see what the issue was. I started to investigate the fuse panel to see maybe there's a blown fuse or something. And when I was down there on the floor taking a look around, I noticed it was damp up front. And then I looked at the back and it's completely soaked down here. So that's just a pool of water. So right now I'm thinking it's the lock control unit that sits underneath the driver's seat in a little dugout, so it sits at the lowest point possible. So if any water collects, that's going to be a spot that's going to definitely see all the water flooding to it, which is a great design. So I'm pretty sure that's what's fried right now. And the thing is, I had just cleaned the rear drains. I stay on top of those, but to be honest, I forgot there were other drains in this vehicle. So I'm thinking that it could be the drains up in the front by the battery, and I have to start by disconnecting the battery first before I go ahead pulling this driver's seat. So I'll take a look there. So in order to access the battery in this car, this is with the front open. You undo these latches here to the point where you can pull up on this battery cover, remove that, get that out of your way. That exposes the battery. I'll be taking off these covers as well to get a better look around the battery. So that's one cover off. That's where your cabin air filter is. Okay. So you can see it has been parked outside recently. So there is some debris from the trees underneath here. And then you can see that there's a good amount of water that's been collected underneath here as well. So that would be an indicator that the drains and the frunk around the battery are clogged. So I'm gonna look that up real quick, figure out where those are at, and then try to snake those. All right, so I cleared one of the drains on the left-hand side of the battery. It was a little bit difficult to find because it was so clogged. Now that I see it, it's very obvious. That's what it looks like there. So there's the battery tray, and then it's right there. All I did was put my finger over it, hit a little piece of debris, and all the water went rushing down. So that's for the left-hand side of the vehicle. There might be another one on the left-hand side. I'm gonna see if I can figure out the right side next. So looking at the right-hand side of the vehicle, it might be a little bit difficult to see on camera, but there's at least an inch of water that has built up in there. So that's not a good sign. From what I'm reading, it looks like the drain may be underneath this bellow here that goes to the brake booster. So there's the bellows. Yeah, if you put your hand down in there, you'll feel it. That was a lot of water. So this one's on me. That's my fault for not looking after the front rain drains when I should have. Definitely a big oversight. Would have been very easy to keep clean but it's not something that was on my radar. I do have a trombone cleaner, which I'll use to snake out these drains next, and then I'll wipe everything down in here to keep it clean. So that looks like the root cause of the issue. I will look for any rips in the foam liner when it comes to the liner back here that sits underneath. If there's any rips in that foam, that could also cause water to ingress. Hopefully that's not the case. So I'm going to clean those drains out. Then I'm going to look for any rips. If that's the root cause, I'm going to pull the driver's seat and see what condition that control lock assembly unit's in. So I got both sides cleaned up right now, as good as it's going to get for the time being. Next thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery. So it's a 10mm connection. So take off your negative first and then the positive. I'm going to put my battery on the charger overnight. So that's the first step before you go about unseating your driver's seat. All right, so before I start pulling my driver's seat, I'm going to disconnect the battery first. So start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal with the 10mm wrench, then the positive side. If you're going to be removing the battery, as I will, so I can charge it up overnight on my battery charger, go ahead and remove any type of vent that you have to your AGM battery. I like to cover my positive terminal to keep it out of the way. And then this is a 13mm bolt down here, which has a little battery hold piece. And then once you have that removed, you should be able to pull your battery. And these batteries are pretty heavy. It's not like a Miata's battery. So I know it's ridiculous, but it does help if you clean out your frunk and you actually stand inside of it and then use two hands to lift up the battery so you don't throw out your back. So I guess one of the good things about having converted the top to be manual and not power operated is that in this situation, I'll still be able to lower the top. And that's gonna make taking out the driver's seat a lot easier. If you're in a similar situation and the battery goes dead on you, just make sure that you open up your passenger door all the way before you lower the top. This way, that window won't be in the way when you lower it, because it's not gonna be able to automatically drop down. Same when it goes for closing the top. Make sure that you pop that door first and then close it and then put the top down over it. So I'll start by getting the floor mat out of the way. What that looks like is removing this cover that goes right by the seat adjustment point, and that has a Phillips head on it. So remove that cover, and then holding this carpet into place, it's just two simple clips. So unclip those. Let's get this cover out of the way, and then remove this cover as well. So when you're removing the seat, the first thing to do is to get these clips out of the way. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna allow you to slip a socket around that star bolt head. That's what it looks like. And it's a 12mm. I'm using a breaker bar to break the torque on it. And that's the set I'm using there, E-socket set. All right, and I didn't remove them all the way. I'm gonna slide the seat forward and then take out the back ones. These ones are just in there hand tight in the front. And then I'll slide the seat back and take out the front ones all the way. All right, at this point, I've removed all 4 bolts on the driver's side seat rails. And then I have a towel down to protect the sills. What I did was I lifted the seat up and then I put it on an angle with the closest rail to the door up on the door frame with that protected. And that gives me a little bit of room to see and to work underneath it. So looking at the underside of the car, the underside of the seat. So there's an electrical connection, and that is housed up on the bottom of the seat. What you want to do is turn that assembly to the left, and that will drop it down. And then looking at the electrical connection, this portion here, that's towards the passenger side. Apologies for the poor visual on this. So there's a clip here that pulls out. Once you're able to wiggle that clip free, so this here pulls out, and then the front portion of the electrical connector will separate. Put that out of the way. So again, it was over here on the left hand side. That's the clip to pull out first, and then the front separates. And that should free up anything on the driver's side seat, so it should be ready to be pulled out of the car. So I just pulled the seat out, and unfortunately this is what I'm dealing with. So if it shows up on video, it's about a ½ inch of water. That's all around this lock control unit here, Central Locking Unit. And I believe this also controls the immobilizer, goes to the alarm system, door locks, window micro switches. So pretty much everything right now that's being controlled by this is inoperable. So I'm gonna look at how to go about taking this out. It looks like there's a Phillips head right there. So that's where I'm gonna start. You'll see there's a bunch of water back here as well. From what I read, these carpets are very padded. There's a ton of padding underneath there, like very thick. It'd be too hard to see, but it's probably an inch of thick foam padding. So what I was reading is it's better to try to remove this entirely to prevent it from getting moldy rather than soak it up with a towel. So for tonight, I might just soak it up with a towel and then work on actually trying to extract the water as best I can. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna pull the entire interior carpet. So that Phillips head clip right there, if you turn that counterclockwise, it'll twist and it'll allow you to pull up this entire assembly. And then if you flip it over, there's 2 electrical connections on the back side. This one here, all I did was pry the clips on either side with a flathead, and then I just had to work it back and forth and it pulled out. So that was completely soaked through. And then on the other side here for this clip, what I did was I pushed down here on that blue tab, and then I was able to walk back this white one here, and that'll flip open and allow me to pull that That was in drier shape, but regardless, this entire unit here is soaked through. So I'll be calling it a night here. I'm gonna take this home. I'll mop up this water. All right, so I should have been filming this from the beginning, but I'll go back and show you exactly what I did here when it comes to removing that central locking unit from the plastic case that it's housed in. So looking at this case, there's clips on the top side, and that fits over little plastic pieces on the bottom. It goes around the case. So all you have to do is take a flathead screwdriver and then wedge it in between this piece from the top piece. Wedge it in between there, twist it, and then gently pull it up. And you're gonna have to work your way around the case, all the way around, and then even on this side, there's one in the center too. So just move it up as you go along. Eventually, you'll get the case to open. When you get the case to open, a good point to grab the circuit board is by these electrical connectors here. That offers a good point to maneuver it. So when this came out of that case, it was absolutely disgusting. I'll see if I can post some pictures on my YouTube channel. I'll try to put them under the community section, and I'll put before and after pictures. So this is with one cleaning. What I did was I took the circuit board out and then I put it into a glass Pyrex that had isopropyl alcohol. You want to use at least a 91% solution. I had this on hand for first aid use and cleaning gardening shears. So empty that in there. I put the circuit board in there and I set a timer for a half hour. Just prior to the timer going off, I started taking a soft bristle toothbrush and I gently scrubbed any points of corrosion along the circuit board, both front and back, and tried my best to work into any nooks and crannies with the bristles. It's very important that you're not too rough with it. You want to agitate it, you want to clean it, you don't want to do further damage. So be very gentle, find your groove, and clean it up as best as you can. I did both front and back side, and then when that was done, I turned the circuit board card on its side, and I drained as much of the alcohol off, and then I positioned it so kind of facing up like this to let it dry off. When it dried, I noticed it left some staining behind. It's a little bit difficult to see. And it also didn't remove all of the corrosion. You'll see there's still some points, and then there's some corrosion as well. So I read a little bit more online and I saw people talk about cleaning circuit boards with a higher percentage isopropyl. So I picked this up at a computer store, and this is 99.9% ultra pure alcohol. I think with this, it's probably best to use rubber gloves when you're working with it. And then if you have a N95 type mask that filters fumes, that's probably not a bad idea either. So I'm going to try the same thing again. I'm going to pour this into the glass. Then I'm going to put the circuit board in there, let it soak for just under a half hour, clean it up, and then I'm going to do the same thing, let it dry. I think this does a better job at evaporating and not leaving behind any kind of staining. And then with that, the toothbrush couldn't get in all the nooks and crannies, so I did pick up, this is lint-free precision cleaning what looks like little pipe cleaners, but it comes on a plastic stick. A little bit expensive for what it is, and I really don't need all that many, but together these cost $27.50, so I'll be hoping for the best. And while that circuit board is soaking, I was able to fully recharge my battery. I used a big battery charger on it, and then I switched over to the battery tender. I want to make sure that the battery is completely good to go when I reinstall it. So after I soaked it in the alcohol, I'm nearing the end of the 30 minutes, what I'm doing is holding the circuit board like this so that the alcohol can rub off it when I'm scrubbing it with it. And the reason you want to do that is you don't want it to lay flat and then for the alcohol to evaporate, leaving the contaminants in place. So you want to make sure that you're holding it so that the alcohol drips off with any contaminants that it has, and make sure you're liberally applying the alcohol. And then if you apply enough of it, hopefully it'll start running off and start dripping off with any of the contaminants that were on the circuit board, and all the corrosion drips down below into a drip tray. This is the final product. I think it came out pretty good using that 99.9% isopropyl alcohol. So that's one side of it. It's a huge difference from when I first took it out of the car, and that's the other side. So it cleaned up very nicely, just letting it drip, making sure that the corrosion wasn't left in place once the alcohol evaporated. And then I let it stand up vertically and dry out for at least 24 hours. One thing to check before putting it back is you want to make sure that the circuit breaker hasn't, or the fuse hasn't been blown there. So the fuse still looks good here. So now I'll work to very carefully put it back in its case. And one thing to do is these little ridges here, the case is going to sit in between them. So try to align that as best as you can, and then it should slide down into the case. And be careful, go slow. Try to push it as evenly as you can. So once it's down there, seated against the case, it shouldn't be sitting on the case. There should be a little air gap underneath it. And then I'll take the top of this, and I'm just gonna secure it over the top and then button it back up. I'm gonna try to mop up as much water as possible that's made its way onto the carpet and the foam underbacking. And I want to prevent mold as soon as possible. So what I'll be doing is I started out by drying all this out the best I could. There was a large pool of water in there, but feeling underneath the carpet, it's still completely soaked all the way through. So if you reach back in the rear groove of the carpet, you should be able to pull it out and pull it up. And then you'll see just how thick that foam padding is. That's completely absorbed an absolute ton of water, and moisture has a way of wicking up into dry surfaces. So even though primarily it was wet down at the bottom, it seems like moisture's wicked its way up into the side. When I reached my hand underneath the front section of the carpet, I could tell there's just a whole pool of water underneath the carpet. So unfortunately, I'm gonna start pulling the carpet. So with the seat out, I'll be removing the cover that goes to the fuse panel there. And then the dead pedal has a Phillips head screwdriver to it. So I'll be removing that screw. And then if you look near the top of the accelerator pedal, there's a Phillips head screw there as well. So I'll be removing that Okay, so with the cover off the fuse panel, that's going to reveal 4 more Phillips head screws there underneath the cover. So go ahead and undo those. I'm going to leave them just in, but all the way loose. So the next thing I'm going to work on removing is the lower seat belt bolt for the driver's side seat. So it has a plastic cover over it. I have a set of interior trim removal tools. So that removed exposes the bolt head, and then it's a 17mm bolt. So I'm going to loosen that up. There should be a good amount of torque behind it. So I'll use a extension if I have to, or rather a breaker bar. And then along the driver's side door, there's a plastic cover when it comes to the trunk and front releases. On there, there's 3 separate covers. So 1, 2, 3. And again, try to get started with the fingernail if you have to, or a small flathead screwdriver, and then use that trim removal tool. Take out those 3, and that should reveal the Allen head bolts inside. The correct size on that is a 5mm, and when you put it in there, just feel around for it. Eventually you should be able to find the bolt head, and if you need to get a little extra something on it to break that torque, you can use a small socket head, put it over it, and that should break the torque on it. And then it's my understanding that if you loosen all of these by hand, but you shouldn't have to remove them all the way. So with these 3 bolts here loosened up, I tried to work free the carpet in the back corner of the car, but it was getting caught on this piece here. So in order to remove the shoulder piece, there's a Phillips head screw on there. So undo that, and then you just kind of grab it and work it out. It's held in place by plastic clips, as you see there. And then once you're able to work that somewhat free, you'll see that the bottom corner of the carpet is held in place through this plastic spike right there. So that should allow you to move up the carpet, and in here you'll see just how thick that high density foam padding is and how good it is absorbing all the water. See how much room there is underneath the actual seat bottom. We'll see if we can start maneuvering this carpet out free from here. I may have to loosen up those bolts a little bit more and then try to work it free from underneath this plastic cover. So this plastic cover here, once those bolts are loose, you should actually be able to pull up on it, and then that gives you a little bit of freedom to move it. So you'll see there's one of those bolts, there's another one that I had loosened up too much, and there's the third one there. So pretty much you just want to loosen those to give this plastic cover the freedom to move up, and then you'll be able to pull the carpet out from under it. So I'll do that. I'll start working the carpet free. So it looks like we got this free here. Gotta be careful with this large wiring loom in the front of the car. Oh, this just feels like a huge puddle to me. Okay. Oh yeah. You can see how much water is built up. Yeah. So this is completely soaked. So let me work on drying some of this and then do my best to remove this driver's side. So I'm usually somebody that likes to work small before I tear into a project. And that's no different here. So what I'm trying to do is squeeze as much of this water out as possible before I go ahead and have to remove that center console, have to remove the passenger seat, and do everything on that side as well. Everything on that side is currently bone dry. I felt around, I investigated. It looks good over there. So if the problem's confined to this area, I'm gonna do what I can to just try to keep this as dry as I can, and maybe put it in the sunshine for a few days. So I'm trying to squeeze all of this water out here, roll it up, mop it up. And this is a method I've devised so far. It's using this like a burrito wrap and rolling it up, trying to squeeze it as hard as you can with both hands. So with the towel going around it, and then also the towels underneath it as well, so that it catches all the water as you're squeezing it. So both whatever you're squeezing, and then as it comes out, the towel's catching it all. Actually, one of the last pieces of interior trim that I'm going to remove is over here by the accelerator pedal. And this, you pull, slide it back towards the pedal, it pops out. It's got plastic clips on the other side that go into those plastic clips. Once you pop that out, you'll see that there's Velcro that separates the driver's side of the carpet from the passenger side. And you can lift that Velcro up and unhook the Velcro. There's 2 different spots, and that will give you a little place to pull the carpet towards yourself. And then depending on the year of your car, you may have different cables coming out of the accelerator pedal. With my car, what I did was I just sliced the carpet up towards the top. The foam isn't very thick there. It's not going to affect anything. And that's going to allow me to pull this carpet out more here and then squeeze up the rest of the water. So far it looks really good from squeezing out all the water, wringing it out. It's not wet anymore. It did take a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I'm not gonna have to pull the passenger side carpet. So I'm gonna roll that up, squeeze all that water out as well. Temperatures here are extremely warm, so that should aid in the drying of everything. All right, so before I start putting things back together, I wanna verify that the rain drains are in fact gonna drain any water that collects underneath either the canvas top or in the front cowl. So what I did was I snaked the drains, and now I'm gonna dump water down. And I can hear it rushing out onto the ground. I'm gonna look around in there for any other cracks or anywhere else that the water may be escaping from. I'm gonna do that on both sides of the rear. And then also I'm gonna climb into the front area, and I'm gonna double check the rain drains in the front as well. The next thing I'm going to do is to reconnect the electrical connectors on the central locking unit, and then put this back into place underneath the seat. And then I'm gonna install the seat loosely into the car, connecting the electrical connector to the underside of the seat. All right, so I have the seat loosely in place. I have the battery in the front. I'm going to reconnect the battery. So starting with the positive terminal. Snug. And the negative. Now, when I first tried to jump the car, when I made the connection to the battery, that's when the alarm or the horn was on full blare. So this should be the first test. It's good that it's single beep, so that's good. All right, I like that so far. So tighten up the connection. Pull that snug. All right. Now time for the moment of truth. Get back in the car. Make sure it's in neutral. Neutral. All right. Foot on the clutch. I think that's what you call the $30 fix. It's idling great. See if we have windows. I'll have to reset them in order to get the full, or the one touch down. I'll have to go through the window set and I'll go through the idle relearn procedure, but very happy. I will likely disconnect everything and leave the carpet propped up for another day or two to give that some time to dry, and then reinstall everything in the reverse order in which it came out. So if you are watching this video, I apologize for the subpar quality at points, but hopefully this saves you a ton of money.